And welcome back, everybody, to This is Dunder Moose. It's going to be a rough one. I've been sick this week. Poor Brown Wizard here just watched me have a horrible coughing fit, so we'll see how this goes. I am joined by Brown Wizard Winston, who's going to be the victim tonight, and the incomparable Gelatinous Rube. First time on a screen, both of us together, man. I'm pretty excited about this, not going to lie.
It's going to be very fun.
I was hoping that the illness of my voice would bring it down an octave or two so that I could sound like I have as many testicles as you do. But, alas, I've only got 3, so it's ridiculous. Oh, Jeff Rose in the house. I got Dury and the Sleepy here, Authoritative News Network.
Nice.
Excited for this. So, here's how I was thinking this would go, and you guys feel free to change the script on me if this isn't lame. But I thought first we would make poor Winston sit there like a. Have you guys ever been in a science fiction writers group or a critique group where like one person writes a manuscript and then they pass it around, and then everyone gets to like critique it, and they're not allowed to say anything. Like they can hold up little signs that show how they're feeling. Like they just have to hold their peace and just take it until the end, and then they get to address the comments, right? So I don't know if you were like, I'm not signing up for that, but that's probably what we're gonna do.
Oh, that's fine.
All right. And then I thought if we could start off.
I don't think so, Jeffro.
You probably quote tweeted him or something.
He did once, but he deleted it because I misspoke and clarified myself. Respect.
Oh, Fluid, the druid in the house. Are you dealing with some sickness as well, my brother?
Oof.
All right, it's just that time of year. So I do want to throw out a caveat. I think that when it comes to critiquing created works, people who haven't done it are often more critical than the people that have. Because people that have been up against it, they know what it's like. They've fought the battles. They recognize good from bad. Whereas somebody that think about the people that critique movies that have never made a movie and they're just rolling their eyes at every little thing. And it's like, man, it's hard to make a good movie. So with that being said, I'm a complete noob here. I've never done this. James definitely has. Indeed. So James, if you want to just tell us, what is it when you critique a module like this? What is it that you're looking for? How do you know how you score something?
Yeah, so this has been in a period of flux recently. I'm not going to make this too big of a spiel because I don't want the conversation to be about the conversation for too long. But okay, so there's that again. Starting off with the context of grand campaigns, I'm looking for something that I can just drop in. I think the primary purpose of a module, if it's not a scenario module, which is basically a campaign setting, but for constrained area, if it's for like a specific hex, I'm looking to see if this can be dropped in not literally anywhere, but if it fits well within the sort of standard milieu, right? So if I'm looking at the module and I say, okay, there's no major conflicts, not with the idiosyncrasies of a GM's quote world or anything like that, but if there's no major conflicts with the game itself, I kind of see modules as filling a niche similar to the special result in AD&D's Appendix A contents generation. There's only one result on there. On that table, it's 18, and it says special or this other thing. And special is intended to be your opportunity to slot in whatever you'd like. That's what I'm looking for in a module.
Keep on the Borderlands has that, right? Like with the Caves of the Unknown, where you could put your own thing in there. You could slot in another module. So I'm kind of along the same
lines. Isle of Dread
line.
is like that. If you have a big lake and you have an island, you could slot it in there. And besides that, I'm looking at gameplay and I'm looking at the consistent. Are there any specialties that this module provides that are taken advantage of over and over again? That's going to be my A+ rating.
Okay.
So, for example, if you have a thing around mimics, well, I'm going to be interested in what you do with those mimics. Yeah,
I hope
on
you
a
like
lower
mimics.
level from yeah, a lower level from that, I'm interested in whether or not it's just mechanically sound to begin with. There's no major conflicts or dumb tricks, basically. And on a level lower than that, I'm looking for compatibility with the grand campaign. Those are the three things that I think can be evaluated, maybe not necessarily objectively, but can be when it comes to the subject of design, we can drill down on how it relates to design, whether it's good or bad, basically.
Yeah, so I had a similar list. My first one was identical to yours. I called it plopability. How easy can I just plop it down in what I've already got going on and have it make sense? I don't want huge backstories about nobles coming to visit and like things that need to happen, and I don't want super specific setting where it's like my guys are going along the coast and like this is a frozen north adventure. You know what I mean? Like kind of what you're saying, James. So I called that plopability. Small cast of NPCs. I'm big on DM. I see that Dacre. Oh man. Sorry guys, I am sick as a dog. I'm gonna try not to make this too juicy. Cognitive load. How much does the DM have to remember in order to just run it on game night, right? And the second category was, wow, I want to run this. And what I mean by that is like, does it have hooks? Does it have memorable moments? Does it have terse writing, evocative language, opportunities for player chaos and shenanigans? And like I said, low cognitive load. And then the third category is, wow, my players will love this. Because I know my guys. They like problem solving, they like fights, and they like interesting loot. So, all right. Enough preamble. Let's get into the review. Would you like to start, Rube?
Should I mute my mic for effect?
You can leave it open for all of the little hurt noises and stuff that you want to make. I'm just kidding. I have no idea what Rube's going to say.
All right, so I'm going to start off with the pros. The pros of this module is that there's a randomized element to it. I like anything that in some way resembles a roguelike, which is if for those of you not aware, because I'm aware we have some boomers in the audience and they're not familiar with these video game terms, those were the people who went off and took good game design and actually did something with it. And they had 40 years of progress as opposed to 40 years of backsliding. So now we get to use their terminology because they did not lose a grip on their hobby the second it arrived. So they have the claim. They have staked their claim quite thoroughly into the kind of terminology we should be using. So this module uses randomized rooms. If you go on a certain level, there's certain rumors that can be repeated and re-rolled. There are certain levels and rooms that you can, every time you go to a new level, you're re-rolling to see what rooms are arriving. It's a lot of fun. And there's a quality to this module that puts me in a position where I could feasibly rerun it over and over and over again, which is ideal because that means if a player wants to come over, dungeon restocking is a lot of fun. Every time the players go in, there's always something new in there. Not literally always, right? Maybe if they're doing it in sequence, if they go 2 nights in a row, it's probably not restocked. But if people are adventuring into it week by week, there's this open slot for after the wizard is killed or whatever at the top of this tower, because when it comes to players, there's someone's going to die. Somebody else can move in. So if they fight with the hag nearby, or maybe not nearby, maybe if they're tracking them, go thief. Oh, that's clever. If they're tracking some enemy or bad guy like a hag, because I keep going back to hags, traveling downwards, and then they track her to this tower. Well, now I get to use it again. There's no reason for the tower to get extinguished. But, one last thing. If you want to stop this to read any comments, by the way, feel free to interrupt me.
Okay.
Or ask me to read them out. I'm totally fine with that.
I'm not trying to interrupt you with the comments, by the way. I'm just getting amused and popping them up there. So
no worries. So, also, it could be used, theoretically speaking, as the new home base or stronghold for a player. Didn't see as much detail on that, but I might not have. I may not have read it as thoroughly as possible, so I'm going to leave that in my ethereal box.
You want me to pop it back up here, and we can? I don't want people to rip it off.
I'm just giving my overview for the starter. As far as things that I consider a little bit of a negative on my scale, so it's good for the grand campaign. There's nothing mechanically offensive about the module, and it looks genuinely fun to play through. Right, it has that whimsical or strange, or not necessarily like a ritualistic mindset, but the randomized nature of a roguelike in a proper context that the players are going to understand and can make decisions accordingly. The one thing that I was a little disappointed by was it didn't seem like certain gameplay. This is more of like an after the thought kind of critique. I don't think it diminishes the module's quality at all. This is a critique that I would prefer. This is something that it's the kind of stuff you always come up with after you release the module itself, right? Or somebody comes up with really only in the context of the product having already been released, and designers only make decisions like these in the moment and by accident, right? It's one of those happy accidents of game design. So you'd be able to steal ones from the magic shop. Yeah, Jeffro definitely has played an attack. The mimics, I was really hoping to see a little bit more from those. I was hoping, the moment I read the descriptions of them, I immediately started thinking of Prey, the video game Prey, where there's all there's literal mimics throughout the space station that's been taken over by aliens they're looking at. Necromancers are looking for pre-corpsed real estate. That's brilliant. I have a necromancer in Shelmus Valley. He's looking to do nonsense like that. So we're going to see what happens after I run this module for my players, and that will be part 2 of this discussion. But so I was hoping to see more from the mimics, a kind of a building mechanic on what's basically a condition for the dungeon. I thought it would have been fun if you were getting a loop, a mechanical loop where players started interacting with the mimics more often, and maybe use them to solve more puzzles. But again, I have not been especially thorough with this module. I may have missed things. So that's going to be the subject. I'm going to be reevaluating my criticisms and praise as we go through this.
Well, I think the mimic thing, there's a random chance that you'll come across the thing that's causing all of that. There is an alpha mimic. What level is the alpha mimic on?
3.
Yeah, on level 3, there's an alpha mimic, but you might not roll him. You might get the antlion or the lurkish or the king basilisk or the basilisk. I can't even talk. I'm drinking this stuff so that I don't cough my head off and then I'm just burping in the microphone. This is a high class show, people. Nothing but the best from the Dunder Moose.
Top rated.
I'm probably gonna die. I'm just gonna keel over. You guys just keep the show going. But the alpha mimic has the ability to create more mimics. So I don't know if it's pointed out specifically, but my take on it was that the reason there's so many mimics is because this thing's just been doing its thing all throughout the tower. But I may be wrong.
Yeah, what I mean is I'm looking for here, there's a new piece of equipment in here, a new dungeoneering piece of equipment where if you throw it, it attracts mimics of below a certain hit dice or something like that, or mimic bait. So if you come across a puzzle where if you need to move something around or figure out or present a specific key, maybe you would stuff this little piece of dungeoneering equipment into the keyhole and then a mimic runs over and turns itself. That's what some of the stuff that players come up with. But then you're running into whether the module is mechanically offensive because it's basically making an imposition on not just this one set of encounters, but on the rest of the campaign as a whole. It's like introducing guns into the game and you specified that they can work everywhere. So it's tricky. I understand why people are a little bit reticent to do stuff like that. It's not necessary to have a good module, but God, does it take it to the A+. And that's the stuff I'm thinking about while I'm running the module.
Right on. So for me, the introduction seemed kind of wordy. Like as a DM, it was hard for me to I'm opening them up. I'm like, I'm going to jump right in. I mean, there is some explanation stuff for people that might be newer. So I get that, I might not be the target audience for every part of it, but I definitely think it's got the replayability and like the whole player shenanigans thing, like just the randomized nature of it makes it fun as a location that people can visit again and again for their own reasons, right? I don't think there's a hooks section in here, right? Aside from the rumors.
Just the intro, really.
Yeah.
With the village.
Just there's this weird tower. What's going on, man?
Yeah.
I should not be doing this. What am I doing?
Having fun. Don't die.
Well, the evaluation of the grand campaign stuff, it's really handy to write down, hey, I do this for all of my how to run sections and all of my campaign book sections. They don't include the quests that I'm referencing. The quests are off in some other section. In the how to run section and the campaign book section, it's always saying, hey, here are the emissaries or informants who can tell you about this thing. If you happen to bring your army across, here's what happened. Maybe there's some special interaction with your commander, and he says, we're not going anywhere near that thing. My troops are not going anywhere near that thing. We'll desert. We'll go somewhere else. We'll fail a morale check. One of my scouts said, there's a wizard tower over there. We are going this way, or we're going back.
Yeah.
And it's these fun little campaign interactions that you can include in again, focusing on the grand campaign and how it technically speaking, also interacts with conventional play.
So a normal run through this thing will kind of play out like a 5-room dungeon, right? Because each room is like an escape room, and you've got to put the pieces together to overcome it to get to the next door, and the door will take you to the next level. All right, so
oof.
Yeah, it's terrible, man. It's so bad. But there are certain things that are not intuitive that they can do to give them a warp zone that'll make them jump up a few levels. So it may not be a 5-room, it may be like a 2-room, depending. But one of the things my players love is this kind of every room has enhanced interactability, where like there's just something to do in each of these rooms, whether it's like mixing chemicals to try and kill off a vine creature, or there may be some potions you need to drink and not all of them are good for you, and it seems like a lot of them can be layering disabilities on the characters for that final encounter. So it may not be in their interest to fight the wizard, because he's like a boss, right? He's got 3 different stages of anger that he goes through, and when you try to fight him. As far as this being level 7, I'm not sure if that would be enough. Like if you got a party that just always wins initiative, I could see him like taking him through 2 phases. But again, I'm not super high on the I don't think I've ever played much level 7 5e, so see what Jeff was saying. A couple pages of random follow-up hooks, like we're put in the Isle of Dread. Also, the side view cutaway of an unstocked mega dungeon underworld that is left as an exercise. Yeah, Jeffro's big on that side view.
Oh yeah, I've seen those. Those are really cool. Yeah.
I will say, so I felt like some of the language up front was really flowery, but there was a section that was that just hit just right. Like I felt like I was glad of it. And I think it's this section here where it's talking about the tower. Just the way that was set, it wasn't like grimdark and foreboding. It was very beautiful, almost like a Miyazaki movie before all the weird stuff happens, right? Like the sun is shining, green plants, little woodland creatures are peeking out and stuff. And I thought that was a really cool way to start it. You're heading towards this crazy, dangerous place, but it's just a really nice day out. And I thought that was a cool touch. So I appreciated that. I was a little confused with the window placement. And I think that plays into another issue I had with it. Hang on a second.
Yeah.
A lot of times there will be like a section.
The wording or like the mechanic in general?
Well, like I didn't know from the outside what layer are the windows on. Because I understood that if you go through the window, it's a mixed bag of where you'll end up. But by hearing that the windows were on separate levels, I felt like I didn't know if like my players are going to see them up towards the top, and it's a much harder climb. It may be in there, and I just missed it.
I can explain it. It might be a little convoluted, but I can explain it.
Go ahead. Yeah.
So it's essentially just another warp mechanic. So you roll which level the window appears, and then you have a particularly ambitious character who's like, I can grapple hook up there and get up there. Well, there's no saying no. It's like, sure, you get in there and then you're on that floor, and then it blocks off communication for the rest of the party. So the rest of the party has to either decide to play it normally or just kind of follow through or abandon their teammate for being so ambitious.
So, but from the outside of it, like
there's only windows on one floor.
But which floor is it on, though?
It's whatever you roll. It's a roll.
Okay. All right. So, thank you for explaining that. And it's probably clear. I on my first read through, I didn't quite get that. There's
a lot to this.
There's a lot of rolling. Each room has a lot of stuff in it. A lot of stuff, and most of it's going to be mimics. But there are a few where, like, as I'm reading it through, I'm picturing myself at the table. I'm trying to remember which room it was, where like you have to roll a couple different places, and it keeps kicking you farther in. Sorry, I feel like I would need to read the whole thing, roll 3 different times before I could start the room. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, some of the rooms have a handful of rolls, but usually the prior level, the prior rooms are more puzzly. So usually when your players are manipulating things and messing about in the previous room, that's when I roll for the next room and get that sort of set up.
Oh, I see. While they're still doing it, you're prepping it. I gotcha.
It's the advantage of having the layout prepared in advance. If you have the layout prepared in advance, the players have, and you have a description for something, even as you're rolling up the contents of the room, the players have a space that has been defined in advance that they can interact with while you're doing other things. If they're just interacting with a blank void, there's no real levers to pull on until your DM says, aha, here are the room's dimensions.
Yeah.
So it's beneficial.
Yeah, I just wondered if maybe it could benefit from some rearrangement where like all of the stuff you need to roll was in the first paragraph, and then that was the way it was laid out. And I'm sorry, I can't find the exact room I'm thinking of where like it keeps saying, okay, well, this is a section that, when you get to that section, you'll roll this, and then it keeps going instead of just putting that section right where I mentioned it. But
or procedure for doing so, where you say, aha, This is the procedure for every time your players change a room or change a level, which is basically identical. You're going to roll for this many mimics, this many this thing, and this many of this other thing.
Yeah, Kara says roll 20 for cough syrup. Problem is, I've like already stacked up all the Delsum and Sudafed, and like I can't take anything else without bad interactions.
I mean, do you have any alcohol?
I do not. I do not have any alcohol.
Okay.
I should come over to your place. You can hook me up.
Rip.
I know you're telling me to get a hot toddy.
A hot toddy, man, it works.
Yes.
I get
Yeah.
a sinus infection the same time every single year, and
So there's one more thing I wanted to mention, and so there's an aesthetic right now called no art punk, right? Kind of a reaction to the was it the Maze of the Blue Medusa and Morkborg and these games that are just have a ton of layout choices and art, and I'm noticing aside from some killer art on the cover, we don't get any like Dyson logos maps. We don't get any interior art, right? Like so that was a choice. I'm fine with it. I like the way this plays because it like I said, it's got that descriptive language, and I feel like I can see it in my head. But it is a $9 module, right? Like all your other
normally.
stuff's $2. Yeah,
normally it's on sale right now.
Yeah, I got it on sale because you reached 500.
500.
Rock on, bro.
Thank you.
So I guess maybe I don't know if that's a question for you or maybe for the whole group. Like, what is the value of art, and how do you see that playing into the value? Because for me, I think the value here is the replayability. Like, every time your guys come back to this place, it's going to be something different, and that's why if I was running it, I probably would not. I'd probably do some kind of way to hook it to where they were trying to get the wizard's advice. I wouldn't want them to kill him. I would be like, all right, he needs to help you with something, or he needs to give you some advice. But the thing is, the place he lives is crazy, and it's going to be hard to get him every single time, and there's some interesting mechanics, right? When you get there, like if you guys have just been stuffing your pockets with his loot the whole time, that's going to put a damper on things. It's not going to ruin it necessarily, but it's going to make it harder. And there's a table at the end that talks about like what impacts his mood. And you get
you have tumors on your thighs, or are you just happy to see my gold? Walking around like Kramer in the Dryer episode.
So like if I was running it, I would definitely make the wizard himself the there you go, Jeffro.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I like that.
He's the only one that can train wizards in the area. And I'm sorry if you thought Harry Potter had it bad with the moving staircase. He didn't have a million mimics trying to snap him.
Perfect example is I have a necromancer player inside of my campaign right now. Right? It's one of the Euro players, so normally play midday when it's with him. He's currently trying to gain access to a place called Gradvach Thule, which is a necromancer college in the north end of the valley. Brigantine, I don't know if he's in here, but Brigantine is familiar with it because Brigandine is familiar with it because he wanted to attack those guys. I told him, no, that's not. They're pre-establishing alliances and peace treaties and stuff like, not aggression pacts in this case, that established. So if you're going to take on this patron, you need to abide by this, at least for a little while. Engaging this wizard as a trainer, for instance, is some of the information that you want to place within the campaign or within the module, interactions that they can have with the players based off of that social, that initial social role, that initial reaction role. He is playing in 47 campaigns as once.
Dude is the most experienced player I've ever met.
He's the most experienced player in the borough, so bar none. And you want to be able to take advantage. So you want to be able to take advantage of those unique gameplay interactions, like you had, to use a video game example, like you had brought a companion along that had a unique interaction with this particular NPC, except that unique interaction is going to apply to one of your players.
Hmm.
And the reason you put that in there, because this was a subject of a discussion that we had with Alchemic Raker and with Roland Bones, or Ryan, was the subject of if you just put a few levers, and you're very good at this when it comes to the contents of each room. In fact, I think it's the primary draw of this module is that I agree with Dunder Moose. There's so much stuff to do in each room. And because it's written out and explained almost as an example of what's possible, a range band of what's possible in each individual room, the player reaction to that typically is, I can do even more.
Yeah.
Now that I know that this is a room that has been created with some specific purpose in mind, if I pull these levers in this order, I will get some effect. What happens if I pull them in a different order? It's what inspires players to begin improvising because they have the confidence. They have the confidence basically in either whoever made the module or in the referee or both.
I'm sorry, man. You're making excellent points in the chat.
And then there's
one ridiculous. Speaking of the Love Wizard, Macho Mandoff in the house, everybody. So I had another question. The mimics themselves, they're not like full size, aside from the alpha mimic and his cohort. They're like one hit minions, right? And
they're
I think
effectively traps in this, because like if you look at just inserting stats for mimics, it's too much work for people to go back and forth, especially with like the ranges of like the bite power.
Yeah,
too much work. So just a trap, but also an interaction where like they clearly just go away in one hit.
I like the interplay that there's a lot of objects and you need to use them to get out, and half of them are just going to take a snap at you. So you did playtesting with this. Like, did you have players like not another mimic? Like, did that part of it get old?
I actually played it after it came out. Just that's how time lined up for it.
Yeah.
So they got bit. They got bit, and it's sort of it's as expected. It creates that sort of hot stove mechanic where they get bit once, and now they're just kind of poking at things as they go through rooms, which is what I wanted.
Down a bit, but like that, man, that is a good feeling as the DM when you see your players taking your module serious. You see them counting the cost. That's pretty cool. So all right, it's there's other things I want to talk about.
I'm going to note that mimic ability real quick. This is for a 5th edition module. This is brilliant. This is fantastic. Okay. Oh, Jeffro, are you claiming that we need to prep the module?
Oh, snap. Oh, snap.
You're lucky I met at Rick today. Okay, so the beauty of this mimic is that, again, it functions as you outlined it perfectly. It functions as a trap. It's a minion. It is an ambusher. It has the role, if you will, ROLE, the monster role of ambusher, and its primary purpose is to lead the players into taking a little bit of damage, losing a little bit of resources, which they can prevent through expending some resources in advance, or they could take their chances and hope that the narration of their actions is going to carry them away from the danger. Right? That's fantastic, because the worst part of 5th edition is probably the combat.
Right.
It's primarily the combat.
Now, so, okay, for scoring, plop ability, 1 out of 10. What do you give it for plop ability, Rube?
1 out of 10?
No,
I have like 3 emotions.
On a scale of 1 to 10.
I have like, I'm sober, I'm a little drunk, I'm fucking slammed. Like that's what I have.
Okay, it comes in 3 sizes.
I'm a little hungry.
Not so wee and freaking huge. So do you give it a wee, a not so wee, or a freaking huge?
Okay, so I think for plop ability, just placing it in the middle of the module, I'll give it a wee. like whatever is in the middle. I think it's good. There's nothing stopping me from putting in the middle. Okay, that's not so weak. Okay, I don't know what that means. My inclination is to say, okay, there's nothing stopping me from putting this in the middle of an active grand campaign.
Yeah,
great, right? That's good enough.
Yeah, for me, I felt like this was ploppable. There wasn't anything. It has mention of a town, but it really is just if you don't already have some place for people to have rumors about this. So I felt like it was really ploppable. I mean, it definitely isn't like if you're in an extreme environment, like if you're in a piracy campaign or like like I said, up in the frozen north. But for most of general campaign play, there's going to be grassy hills, right, where your tower can be.
Which is a little bit of a shame because actually that's what would have carried this to maximally ploppable, basically. If you had said, if 3 breadsticks, oh, that's amazing. The cube rating system. We're up to squared. It's squared ploppable, but it's not cubed ploppable. Cubed is the maximum. No, so let's say that the rumor system had in some way incorporated or was the basis for where you place this tower in your campaign I'm going to roll up 2 rumors, and whichever of these 2 eligible rumors comes up first, that's that's where you generate it, right? So you roll on the rumors table twice, and you come up with a pirate tells you a story about this tower, or a local shepherd tells you a story about this tower. And if those are your 2 rumors, then whenever you next come across a shepherd or an environ's appropriate for it, or whenever you next come across a pirate captain or an environ's appropriate for it, that's where the tower arrives. That's what I consider to be the maximum compatibility with the grand campaign.
Or like a hip pocket, like let's say this giant pillar demon with mouths from another dimension comes in and nobody knows how to fight it, and it's like you get a rumor, oh, there's a wizard up in a tower that has seen this before, and he can give you the straight dope on what dimension that's from and what its weaknesses are. And then it's like, well, where is the tower? And then you can look around where the players are right now and make it
that's kind of tracking backwards, but but yes, that's a good one. That's the information that you would include with the Maw Demon quest. Is you would say, okay, there's some people if you've interacted with these people before, they might be able to come out the woodwork and say hello, or the players might be. These are the characters that the players might consider eligible, basically, for information on this quest, or here are the emissaries eligible to give the players information on it. That would work backwards, based on the way that I structure grand campaign modules at the moment.
All right, so you give it a not so wee. I'm gonna say frickin' huge because I think I could put this just about anywhere I want and I could flavor it. As it comes to wow, I want to run this as a DM. Like, is this something you're going to run? Is this something you could see yourself having fun at the table with? Were there moments in there that kind of sparked your imagination?
Yeah, so like the floor is partially lava is a room that's in there, and I love anything that makes use of environmental conditions. It's one of the things that I love about the mimics. Again, going back to, I think this is the module's selling point, is there's a bunch of mimics in every single room, and they don't take they just get a free attack in, which is all that the regular mimic was probably going to get anyways, except you don't have to adjudicate burning through 138 hit points to begin with.
Yeah.
In order to make that happen. It's just traps that they get to take advantage of. Brilliant. That's exactly how mimics should work.
Especially in an environment where they're going to be riffling through all the books and
poking around,
touching everything they possibly can because they cannot help themselves. Yeah. But no, so that's a dungeon condition, right? If you're giving me dungeon conditions or environmental conditions, we went over this just the other day when it came to the Wandering Tower as a mimic itself. Hal's moving mimic.
Yeah.
Wait, it was a mimic the whole time? Always has been.
Perhaps.
So no bus.
That's the kind of stuff that I love to see in dungeons. That's the most mechanically appealing factor of these modules, because maybe I could go off to a different dungeon and give it the dungeon condition of mimics, right? We did this with Israfel's Library. What was it, 2 nights ago? There's a unique dungeon condition on it for elemental tithes. Elemental encounter gets encountered. Players do a thing. If they do it this way, a monster gets added to this encounter. If they do it a different way, it gets added to the other encounter. And that's a really fun interaction. So even if I'm looking to randomly generate a dungeon on my own, I'm still being provided with unique results that I could feed straight into an Appendix A dungeon, because it's not just mechanically compatible, it's mechanically desirable, right? That's the A+ rating that we're looking for, and that's the module selling point.
Right on. There was one that blew me away. The room, you go into it, and it's just a simple room. It's got a locked door on one end, and in the center of the room is a gelatinous cube with the key. The key is in the cube, but the twist is the entire cube is frozen solid. Right? And so you can't just push your hand in and grab it. And like as the time starts ticking, like the lights show up on the floor warming up the cube, and they're moving towards the center. And like the warmer the cube is, the farther you can push your hand in, but also the more the digestive juices start to activate. So you got that risk reward. And if you wait until the thing is totally thawed, it's very hungry and it will come at you. So you got this kind of like, I mean, a frozen solid gelatinous cube. That I was just like, that was one of those ideas where I'm like, why didn't I think of that? That's kind of about the wow factor. Like, I want to see what my players do. And I really like the idea, not always of having a solution for them. Like, oh, here's 3 ways to solve this, but just give them a problem. Just say, hey, guess what? The key you need is in the middle of that. What the heck are you going to do? And then,
It's right in that range of things that the players have resources to use to solve this. Everybody has some kind of fire-producing material in every single adventuring party. Everybody has something that they could use to maybe drill. Everybody has spells that they could maybe interact with. Or not everybody has spells. Now you're getting to the things that are common to most adventuring parties. But there's virtually nobody who could come in here who couldn't take advantage, who couldn't solve this problem in some way, and you're on a timer anyways until the problem is solved, but a new problem is made. You reinvented the ice cube, literally. It's fantastic.
We're doing a serious show with this chat. These guys are crazy.
No, this is serious. Like, if you, or what was it? My video on your first adventure went really far into. Goldberg machine composed entirely of mimics. That's hysterical.
That's fantastic.
So in my your first adventure video, a really big subject or a big thread or chunk of that video was on how you could take advantage of normal encounter structures and just put slight modifiers on everyday monsters to generate a breadth and depth of unique encounters that didn't require you to create entirely new monsters, right? And that's what you did. Here's a gelatinous cube. It is a creature which is evolved for the grid. Sorry to all the fans of Theater of the Mind, but is a creature which is evolved for the grid and is frozen. It can't move. It can't do anything, but it has something you need in it, right? It's the same as coming across an orc captain who has the key to the dungeon or the key to the chest or the missing gem that goes to the hilt of the +5 Holy Avenger that's in the other room. Fantastic. Now there's this little interplay. There's a secondary objective or goal that expands the range of not necessarily experiences that your players have. It does a little bit, but that's not exactly the exact wording I'm looking for. It expands the domain of thought, or it expands the range of approaches that your players will consider before engaging the encounter.
Yeah.
They're not thinking about it like a normal combat encounter. They're thinking about it in terms of a number of different solutions, some of which are going to be combat, some of which are going to be narrating their actions and using their equipment and stuff on their character sheet to produce success without missing out on valuable resources. And that's the game.
Yeah. As Rick Stump said in my first episode, there's a certain type that looks down at the sheet to see what they need to do. The better ones are the ones that look up to think, okay, what should I do? And I feel like the scenarios that encourage that kind of play will lead to stronger and better players over time.
I think that's dumb. I think you are looking at the sheet if you're interacting with this thing. I think you are looking to see how many torches or tinder boxes you have, or whether you picked up in the previous room an alchemist potion or something like that. I think that's people who play mudcore games are really fond of that thing about like, oh, don't look at your character sheet. Just think of what you'd like to do. That's fine if you're playing first level BX, but this is a game and you're given resources that are supposed to interact with this consistent rock, paper, scissors of producing success for your characters. And most of those are on your character sheet.
Okay, I see what you're saying there.
Looking through the toolbox.
Yeah. You have a toolbox. When I was building grills for National Assemblers, I wasn't just sitting there thinking like, what's the best way to go around this? Maybe I could twist my hand this way. No, I had an impact gun. But sometimes I used a wrench and sometimes I used a ratchet because that was the better option, especially for those fucking Weber grills.
There's nothing on the character sheet that will solve the flail snail shell trap.
Sometimes we create traps advanced beyond the concept of gaming overall.
Yeah.
All right.
We tried everything
but
on
for
the
when
sheet
we don't. And the players will only figure that out once they've gone over the character sheet.
But you do have players that will like look at, especially 5th edition, they'll look at their list of skills and they'll be like, which one of these can I roll a d20 on to overcome the ice cube?
I think that's because they don't see it as a toolbox. They see it as a box. And they're constrained to the box, so they don't see the tools. They see the options that they're limited to instead of like, hey, these are the tools that can jumpstart me to the solution.
All right.
Yeah. Well, that's the problem is it plays like it gives you the impression of a game like that, where you do have all the options, where you do have the full spread of rock, paper, scissors. It's just a matter of figuring out, or does this one need rock or does this one need scissors? But often what you find when you're looking at the 5th edition character sheet is you have a handle, a pebble, and a book with no pages in it. And that's supposed to fulfill the niche of rock, paper, scissors, but it often just doesn't quite work.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Roll survival.
And on top of that, they don't have the gaming experience of playing BX or a role-playing activity, which is purely focused on figuring out what your equipment can do for you, because the rest of your character is so utterly useless in this non-game that you have to think of the equipment's uses or else.
That session would have gone better if you'd been there, Fluid. We needed you, man. It set up some crazy stuff. Okay, enough chip chat. And I realize that's not a word, chip chat. Final score. Would you, if you hadn't got it for free, Rube, would you buy this for your players, your 5th edition players?
Would I buy this for my players? Ooh, that's a good question.
Knowing what you know about it.
So right now, if I'm giving this, I would give this like a 3 out of 5. This is good. Okay. All right. There's nothing in here that makes me. It's even better than just good. Like it's good according to my higher standards of play. Right. It's good. I can drop it straight into the grand campaign. I am going to have to do more in order to actually use it. I'm gonna have to write up something else for who is going to inform the players of this dungeon, or how are they going to get information about it besides the information gathering material that they already have access to in actions. Man, you can just as easily run this
called me the best player
for AD&D or basic. As far as I'm concerned, this is so compatible with most grand campaigns that it might as well be a system neutral product.
Right on.
But I think it's so. I think that's good. I think that's pointing in its favor. As far as the mechanics go, I think it's a 4 out of 5. I think you understood the assignment insofar as randomized dungeons. I can reuse this dungeon again. The players are probably going to. It's probably not going to be the same players over and over again. But gosh, I could. Knowing that in advance, I could place this in somewhere particularly interesting. Like this is the dungeon that like you have to go through in order to advance to some other location in the campaign, such that any player who wants to go there within the context of the grand campaign, within the roster, has to make it through this dungeon first. And then I can make sure that multiple groups are going through it. So that's the thing that I have to come up with, and that's why the grand campaign rating is 3. But as far as mechanics go, it's at least a 4.
Yeah, and 5th edition is not the best edition for grand campaigning. I would make the case for that.
I would definitely make the case for that. Yeah. No, my campaign sucks. It has cool moments. It has cool moments in it and stuff like that. But like I'm half designing things while I'm half running the campaign. That's not a good way of going about things.
Building your airplane after you jumped off the cliff, right?
Exactly. and when it comes to the things that part of the point of this test was to examine the onboarding cost of like, even if I have really high quality homebrew that's made for everything that we delight in, can I actually get players into it?
Yeah,
like I could if I was playing AD&D. And the answer is unequivocally no. The onboarding cost for bringing new players in is astronomical when it comes to games that are not built for grand campaigning. Yeah. Even for people who desperately want anything other than the conventional play loops of 5th edition, just explaining all the new things that they have to take into account is like, I don't know how to interact with this.
Henry. All right. Well, I did promise DM Blackwell that I would give a shout out to Horde Wars. He's not a sponsor of the show, but on Big Geek Emporium, he's trying to get to number 1. He's at number 2. If he gets to number 1, he's going to ship a physical copy for free to one of the purchasers. So $5 for a game. And that art's pretty sick too. But getting into that, let's what would I search to find all your stuff on here, Winston?
I think just Brown Wizard Winston on there. Probably 5e as well. I can't imagine there's too much on there.
All right. Did I misspell it?
No, that looks fine. It might be one word.
Brown Wizard. I'm just gonna write Winston. But anyway, while I'm searching and struggling, you guys don't have to wait for that. You have been polite. You've been sitting here biting your tongue, listening to us hold forth. Anything you want to counter? Anything you want to explain? Anything that came up while you were listening to us rate your product?
Yeah, I took some notes.
All right, let's do it.
Players should take notes.
I'm going to go refill my bourbon, but I do have Bluetooth in.
Right on, right
on. As far as like post game, that just never crossed my mind. I haven't explored that as much because most of the stuff that there's all my stuff there on the front.
Yeah, it's Brown Wizard Publishing. Okay.
Oh, right. Yep. So as far as like the fortress, I had come up with this and written it before I dove into 1E proper. And even seeing you guys talking on X, I didn't realize how big of a factor running your own keep, castle, tower, running that kind of stuff was such a key part of like OSR type stuff. So it's a cool idea. I probably would have put it in after, as you probably could tell. Options was the big thing here, was providing options and avenues of play for players and to spark the imagination of the DM to kind of do their own thing as well.
There's a lot of creativity in this module.
The cube room, I came up with that when I was like trying to fall asleep. I was just like, man, that's such a good idea. This is such a good idea to pull my phone out and start, 1 a.m. just I need to put this down.
Yeah, I'm probably gonna have that tonight with all the Sudafed I took.
Another thing too that is kind of the intent of this is it's built in a way that it can be modular as well. You can build your own rooms for this and slot them in, add them to the stack, slot rooms out. Maybe I don't like this room so much, so I can make my own, tweak it however you like, adding to the replayability. Or maybe your player, you run it, a player takes it, wants to run it, but wants to add on to it as well.
Yeah.
So that was also part of the intent, just real flexible sort of approach with it. Plus, Wizard's Tower, I had so many ideas, and trying to do something that's more linear, I just felt like I couldn't do all my ideas with this. So I was just like, I'll just do all of them. All of them.
You said you played it after you published it. How many times did your players wind up fighting the wizard as opposed to interacting with him?
They only played it once.
Okay.
It's still.
How long did it take to get all the way through it?
Just under 4 hours.
Okay.
And that's with
perfect.
That's with children playing and getting up every 5 minutes and stuff like that. It still was pretty smooth, which was fun because they actually got to do the Hungry Hungry Cube room, and they did not handle it well. they had to fight it. They were all
Love it.
They were all very afraid to poke their hands in, so they were trying to poke their weapons in and stuff, and we were doing rolls and stuff.
You should have one of the objects inside the cube also be a mimic and bite them when they reach. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, you could do that. You could absolutely do. I was thinking about it because I was reading up on.
One of them is hungry.
Yeah, I was reading up on it, and just the digestive acid of the cube. I just couldn't think of like. Now, this might be sort of immersion breaking if I put a mimic in there because it's there's just metal stuff in there.
Yeah. You're saying this is dissolving in here. People are going to be like, all right, well, how long has this been?
It's okay to have
one of those
one
criticisms
room that's not jam packed full of mimics.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those criticisms you could come with after the fact. That's a little bit CinemaSins tier to go like, oh, why didn't this person say this? Or why didn't that person say that?
Yeah,
that would make more sense. It's like, it's not really the point when we're evaluating the value of creative work. We're trying to evaluate whether or not it communicated properly what it was trying to accomplish. In the context of a game, that's just, okay, there's a mimic and you have an obstacle in front of you. It's embodied by a mimic. That mimic is frozen, and you have to interact with this ice in some way to interact with the mimic, to interact with the key. So that's your 3 steps of, and so forth.
So I run an interview channel, and I know this was a review episode, but I have 2 game designers here in the room with me, and I would be remiss if I didn't at least open it up to some, because I gotta imagine part of my audience is interested in publishing their own stuff. So
don't
want any competition.
Also that.
What lessons? Because this is your 5th module.
7th.
This is your 7th.
7th. Mm-hmm.
What have you learned as you've been rolling these out? Like anything stand out? Like, man, I wish I'd have known this when I'd started.
Mostly style, mostly through the process of writing these. So I started with the very first one's very tame, for lack of a better word. It's very new DM friendly, where it's just like it's got a couple neat ideas. Most of them are based off the 5-room dungeon sort of model. But from there, it was just sort of exploring ideas, but they're generally like guided narratives. They're, hey, Bob didn't show up for the session. Let's just run a module because we kind of want to run, we want to play with him, not without him.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. Drop in, drop out kind of stuff. And going from that and, talking to everyone on Twitter and exploring all the OSR stuff, like my thought process has changed along with it. Like, I can approach this differently and build on it. So I guess my advice would be just make stuff. Right. Your initial stuff may not be good, but you're going to be learning and building on top of what you've done anyway. And that's valuable in itself. Even if you don't sell so many modules, you're gaining those skills. You're seeing what works, what doesn't. Just keep going with it.
Sorry, it's getting ridiculous again.
But it's true. The Chumas Valley Encounter Manual has a number of different. Most of the monster descriptions are not about aesthetics. They're primarily about how you can magically bind, tame, parlay with, or get useful components out of the monsters. Right? Almost everything has at least 2 of those particular descriptions, but there's one last one for the description section, and it began with the very first monster, which was the Vergalus toad, our version of the ice toad, called Cooking, where we describe the useful cooking components that you could get out of these individual creatures. And for the Vergalus toad, it's the eye functioning as a whiskey rock.
There you go.
The cooking problem has not yet been solved in D&D, but somebody will get to it soon.
It's fantastic.
And how many? Because you had the druid one, right, Rube? The old trees. I can't remember what it's called. Where like the old druid dies and like you have to take over and you got to get the forest back under control, right? Is that not you? Was that someone else?
I think that was somebody else. I've done a bunch of mini adventures that I included with airships of practice. I've done a bunch of. I've been running West Marches and now Grand Campaign, evolving this year to Grand Campaigns.
You didn't do a Kickstarter on druids in a forest and.
No,
Man,
I don't
crap,
think
I backed that thing. With you, bro. Okay, well. Never mind. I retract the question.
No. You're thinking of Seven Willows, which is a little bit of it's both an individual role-playing game and it's a little bit of a module.
Okay, so I didn't waste my money. That was you. All
exactly. Right. No. And if you ordered the book, those are coming out soon. I'm resolving my issue with ShipBob by just going with U.S. Postal Service instead.
Poor Angela.
Henry's same issue. He's the same issue with the printer. Like, oh, what about this price? What about that? Like, no. All right, I'll go to something else. And it turned out shipping was going to be solved the same way.
And so this is a great way to get rich, though. Yeah, publishing modules.
No.
Not so much.
The margins are tiny and non-existent. If you could collaborate with people, but they will either abandon you, be terrible at their jobs, or outright plagiarists. ChatGPT is really good nowadays for having like a writing partner. I can type a query or question in and look at it for 10 seconds and say, "Oh, that's dumb," and then do something different. But it's a good
way of going from 0 to 1.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's the response of getting around blank page syndrome, basically.
Yes, very much.
I used a lot for the. You want to be careful if you're using ChatGPT, not because you're. I don't know, man. I am very cynical nowadays about people making things. When it comes to the video game, I'm watching the video game industry begin for the first time its backslide. Similar to what tabletop RPGs did immediately, where they have no idea what made the things that came before them fun. It's only weird if you make it weird. Okay.
It's only weird if you make it weird. And Henry, you made it weird.
Were the things that made video games great in the past, like Bungie's 15 seconds of fun, the concept. I think there's a big section of my Grand Campaign video in definitions. Nobody thinks of the grenade in Halo as being what makes things fun, but if you take out the grenade, if you take out that weird physics interaction, like, I don't know, AI is turning you gay. Well, what's your excuse, you old boomer fuck? You didn't have AI back in your...
We have jumped the rails.
Anyways.
You guys trying to get me doing a coffin fit again, aren't you?
Somebody threatened to fight me IRL, and I gave them my address today, okay? That's like, I don't have any. My chill is out.
Oh, my goodness.
Anyways.
Meanwhile, Fluid is likening it to a Ouija board.
Yeah. Yeah, it already got to me. But no, so really, I don't know. So I have a general cynicism towards people making new things. I genuinely think you should ask yourself before you make anything for public consumption, whether you're making something unique or interesting, or of. I want you to make a serious consideration as to the value add. Yeah, it has been making video games worth the serious consideration as to the value add of your industry. And yes, other people are not making that decision, and they will flood the market with worse content. But I think if you continue that practice and eventually come to the realization of whether you are prepared to make this, or whether you're prepared to support somebody else in their endeavors, or prepared to, or if you are just like a natural designer and you have some talent in this industry and the capacity to understand what makes it good in retrospect at the very least, then you could start making things then. But I'm going to give people the same. Here's what I'm going to do. Here's my instruction. I'm going to give people the same recommendation that I made to Curator before starting like a 50-player game, or to anybody else who wanted to jump straight into patron mechanics because they thought it was a new fad and would immediately tap into it without any work. Contribute to someone else's design first. If you can handle discussions with somebody else, with another designer or a designer, if you could handle discussions and critique and the intense back and forth that is required of people trying to solve a creative problem together, then you will be, at the very least, you stand a head taller above the rest of your competition. If not, probably shouldn't be in the game to begin with.
I'd say that's not just good advice for designers. That's good for DMs. That's good for players, right? Like, I think one of the best things you can do is take a humble entry point. Like you said, maybe help someone else out with their thing first. The guy that wrote Black Worm of Brandonsford, Chance Dudenak, he started helping out, I think it was MT Black, with the Strange Light Manor. Awesome.
That sounds
module.
about right. One of my cousins, my cousin Anthony, actually wrote a module with MT Black. He used to be a lot more. I don't know what that guy's doing today, but
good stuff. But like for me going into Trellopolis, I came in, I'd read all of the session reports. I was really excited. I was like, I had a little bit of the, I mean, we got him in here. We got Jeffro, we got Fluid and stuff. And like these were my critical role. And so I came in with eyes open, watching the rest of them for cues to say, how do I handle myself? And I felt the group come around me, and Brigadine took me under his wing and said, okay, here's how this works. Here's what we're doing. It made a huge difference to how I approach playing the game. Likewise, when Ryan was on my show talking about Bro-Oriental Adventures, one of the things he mentioned at the beginning of the show was that he didn't feel like people in his age group had a lot of mentors. And I've been thinking about that quote because that's a two-sided thing, right? Either you don't have mentors because people from older generations aren't willing to share. That's one thing that it could totally be. And I'm not saying it wasn't that. But the other side of that is how open are you to, when they do share, to incorporating that advice versus plowing all on with what you want to do. And so I think that maybe we've stumbled upon maybe a more universal principle as don't show up thinking you're going to be caller on day one, and that your experience playing the game for 40 years or whatever has anything to do with the way that BroSR is doing it now, or, with the publishing industry now, or, pick your milieu, but come in humble, come in watchful. I think that the system will either accept or reject you depending on your entry posture.
The mentor-mentee relationship is such a difficult nuance, that, especially when it came to the discussion of Curator, because if you are posing yourself as a mentor, if you are giving somebody advice, you are...
That's hilarious, Jeffro.
you're taking, to some degree, you are taking responsibility for the outcome.
Yeah.
And that's not something that old people especially, have an easy time, or I shouldn't say old people, anybody above the age of 35 nowadays does not have the emotional maturity to evaluate partial responsibility for something. Yes, ultimately it is this person's fault, and they ultimately did fuck up this, and this. But when I was giving curator advice, I am to some degree me, who only gave him a couple lines of advice, which were critical and ignored, sadly. I'm to some degree responsible for his fuck up, because I presumed to give him advice, and I didn't do it in a way that realistically changed the outcome to improve it in a significant fashion. I should have been sounding the
I don't get it. But that might be the cough syrup. So.
Yeah,
I'm tracking with what you're saying
every single day. Like, dude, just start with a listen. Okay, I'll give you the preview to my script that I haven't finished yet. At the time, hadn't finished my script on your first adventure. Start with it. Take Gygax's advice. You start with one town. You start with one dungeon, and then you think about how it can spiderweb out from there. And drop a few hints or clues as to how it can spiderweb out from there. And then most of the adventuring is going to start out from there. You tell your players ahead of time, hey, this is going to be your trial run. This is also my trial run. We're seeing whether or not we're a good fit for the grand campaign, and whether or not this is something that will grow or something that will just run us down over time, and we should be playing board games or video games instead. You're going to take this maturely. I should have been shouting that from the rooftops every single day. And so because I didn't, I am to some degree responsible for curator's miserable piss baby whining that he's been engaging with ever since he banned the singular DM trying to rescue his stupid wreck of a campaign.
There's the gelatinous Rube I was expecting.
That's my fault. That's partially on me.
Yeah. Well, so
not managing this idiot 20-year-old.
Well, okay. There's a lot to unpack there. I'm a firm believer that when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. That like maybe you get the good stuff before you're ready for it. And if you have a mentor, you've got to realize that even though they may be further along in something than you are, they may not be, as you said, good at presenting the knowledge in a way that you can accept it. And so how do we overcome our own resistances? Maybe you didn't like the way that you got the advice, but how do you still see the little flags that it raises? Say, okay, maybe I wouldn't handle it the way he said, but it is an issue that he's pointed out, and I need to wrestle with it. But not to get too much about that scenario, what happened. I am interested, though, from your guys' perspective in this publishing, in this creating of modules and game material. Is it a community, and does what other creators have to say or do help you succeed, or is it really at the end of the day, it's like I've got this creative urge, I need to respect it and get something out there, whether it makes money or not, and it's not really up to anyone else but me?
For me, it's more the latter. I when I got on Twitter to kind of show my stuff, I didn't really look for. I kind of looked for other creators to see what they were doing, but good advice is good advice. And other perspectives are useful, whether they're bad takes or good takes, because it adds to your perspective. So I'd always snoop around and see what people were talking about.
Sorry. Every single time.
Every time.
A good point.
Boomers don't know the meaning of the word responsibility, and they never include themselves and it in the same sentence. Okay.
You guys, we're trying to have a show here. Do you mind? Winston was gonna drop some gold, and you had to. All right.
The day of the pillow was today. Okay, I wasn't expecting it. It just came upon me.
Oh man.
Oh goodness.
Rich Stump, if I see you at my house, I'm gonna come in your beard. Do you understand? Anybody else, I'd shoot on sight. But you specifically, I'm gonna give you an experience you never forget. Threatened to show up at, what's your address, little man? Motherfucker, it's I already sent it to him.
So,
I had hair in my mouth. All right, anyways, what was I saying?
this has been my experience on Twitter. I meet my heroes and then I watch them tear each other apart. Oh. Do you see why he was a little nervous to come on here, Rube?
What other is the best experience anybody could possibly get? I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh
my
goodness.
Oh, where do we go from there? Okay,
talking about the oh, there's the cat hair. Just think it floated in front of my face. So when it comes to these, my opinion is that when it comes to these flags of, do you go with somebody else's thing? Do you not go with somebody else's thing? Do you take somebody's advice for running a campaign, let's say? For running a campaign, I think you should do a spread, an adventure, basically. Okay, I'm going to see how this works. I'm going to try what you're doing, and then I'm going to come back to you and give you feedback. It's like, all right, well, I feel like this wasn't working. It's like if you have a mentor for sales, right?
Yeah.
The person who draws up the sales procedure and the pitch that you're supposed to develop is giving it to you for a reason. Because if you were just they're giving it to you for a reason, because you don't know what you're doing. You're inexperienced. Okay, you don't know what's going to erupt out of anything. So you might as well start with the template. And then if you go back, they might have more feedback for you. Hey, I'm getting a lot of resistance. I'm getting last minute resistance when it comes to the close. I'm getting a lot of objections and interruptions to the sales procedure. And my bridge from service description to pricing. Okay. How do I work? I'm getting a lot of questions about quotes in the beginning. It's the same deal with pickup. It's the same deal with design. It's the same deal with any kind of creative endeavor.
Yeah.
That you're supposed to repeat and iterate on specifically. So what you do is you try it out first, and that gives you the language and the experience to even have the conversation to begin with. Okay.
Yeah.
And like, if you want to design something like, man, I still haven't published Chilmus Valley. If somebody else knew Chilmus Valley, I'll give you a revenue split. All right. Like it's one of those things. I'm happy to work with people on this subject because I think it will turn into something better. I would love to do a little uplift protocol for new and up and coming designers, but you have to understand the investment cost is really, really high in an industry where costs are already prohibitively high.
Yeah.
So that's my pitch is talk to somebody who needs help. Say, here's how I can help you. Here's what I'm eventually expecting in return. But don't front load your costs. Front load your availability. And that makes the exchange of experience and teaching and what you will eventually turn into something profitable or valuable, whether it's business-wise or in the context of running a campaign. That's what will make that exchange even, and even weighted a little bit in your favor.
Because you're not coming with your hand out. You're coming to say, what can I do to help? And then you're picking it up along the way.
I've already spent too much money on people who turned out to be plagiarists, right? Before ChatGPT existed, there were people who would just copy paste stat box from the 5th edition SRD. And I didn't find out until I had two separate designers who were not speaking in the chat that they were supposed to be speaking in, post the same direct message me the same mechanics. for like Fey weapon telekinesis or something like that. I'm like, this is really specific. Did you get this from anywhere? And I had to dig for each one. And one of them was the worst plagiarist was really dishonest about it and didn't admit it until I dug more information out of the designer who admitted it. I got it from the 5th edition SRD. Because at first I was asking him straight up if he plagiarized it, and he said no. I'm like, all right, did you get it from the 5th edition SRD? And he's like, well, that's part of the OGL. That's part of this thing. None of my products use the OGL. This was way before the fiasco, but I saw it coming. So that's why Airships of Brackets, the Alchemist, the Artificer, the Seer, Astral Tides, none of them use the OGL for this reason, because I wasn't even going to
don't even play with it.
Yeah. There's so many charlatans. You need to do something of value up front to prove that you're not one of them. And you can do it in a way that is going to give you a much, much higher return on investment. The beginning of any creative relationship is an investment on both people's parts. And you have to understand and account for the fact that the return on both of your ends is not going to come for at least a couple months down the line.
But when you do
I wish it weren't the case.
Like if you're someone who's already somewhat more established and someone comes along and offers help and you establish that relationship, they're going to be looking out for you too, because they get to own part of your success going forward, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
that's what stuff like revenue splits are for.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead. I've been talking for a while.
Oh, no. I was going to move on. We're already like almost a half hour over. But like I do like one of my favorite things on this show, talking to people that are passionate about this game is I want to hear your awesome game stories. Like what is something that happened that when you think back on it, you're like, man, this is why I love this hobby. This is why it's the best. Here's something that happened that was crazy. And I'll let Winston go first.
A little longer, some setup.
Sure.
Playing game, my buddy plays, and we're playing 5e. Rolls up a character. He's playing a barbarian. Goes by the backgrounds, right? Backgrounds have like you can roll the your traits and stuff like that. Kind of, this is my character's kind of personality and stuff. He rolled. He took the. It's like either Outlander or one of the hobo backgrounds, and he rolled. I was literally raised by wolves. And he played that literally. So his part of his background. So his character's full name was Arf Arf Yip Yip Yow. And the only word that he knew was axe, because that's what he wielded. That's what first like tool he found was an axe, and he knew understood the word for it. That's how he played the entire time. So the other players would be like, Arf, what do you think about this? X. It's fantastic, phenomenal. He later told me, like after we were done with the game, because we played a whole campaign like this, like 1 to 5. He later told me it was very hard to do because, all the puzzles and stuff like that, he would not involve himself because his character just was not intelligent. So we get to the final dungeon and they're going, around rooms and looting and stuff like that. The ranger and I believe he played a rogue, halfling rogue. They found a loot box and they got it. They just couldn't get it open. And they're here, Arf, you can open it. Now I use Donjon to generate tables. You use tables and stuff like that. And I'd done loot off that. Generated a loot table. Didn't know what was in this box. Generated a loot table. Arf opens it. The other two players are like, well, there's some stuff in there, but since Arf did all the work, let's just give him, the stuff. Turned out to be a headband of intellect. And he puts it on and just articulate, well-spoken, and everyone's like, what?
That's
just
great. Perfect.
Fantastic.
Just all that pent-up role play that he wasn't able to take part in started to come out.
It's fantastic.
Thank you for sharing that, man. That's awesome. I don't know what you were trying to do in the chat there, Room. Are you baiting Rick?
This is my best Sam Hyde impression. Don't worry about it.
Right, like I'm trying to think. Have I had
Rick,
a guest?
stop!
Have I had a guest on the show that you guys haven't called out tonight? All right, Rube, you got a story for us, man?
I do. I'm going to use one from my current campaign. I have some favorite stories as a player. I've told them elsewhere. I think it would be useful to talk about them in the context of a grand campaign that I'm running. The players had engaged with, let's see here. The players had just finished a session where they recovered a shipment of subdued white dragons that had gone missing somewhere along basically the Mississippi River of Chilmus Valley that runs straight through the center. So
How
they
many
were able to
subdued
take
white dragons? That's a treasure, man.
I believe it was a total of 6, and they
my
recovered 4 or 5.
Oh my!
Like a squadron.
Yeah. Well, my general approach to dragons is to say, okay, there are adults and ancients sleeping underground that just shit them out every single year. They just just make a ton of babies every single year, and most of them get eaten or killed. But a few of them survive, and a few of them get captured. Okay, so they go down there. They make it to this location. They rescue the white dragons. They're mostly docile for reasons that they never figured out. There's some fake shenanigans going on there where these dragons had actually been charmed to do something. If something happened and they rode these white dragons over a certain location, something was going to happen. But it didn't, so whatever. And they decided the whole reason the wizard got these white dragons for them because he wanted the players to venture into the frost that was slowly encroaching from the northern end of the valley.
Yeah.
And he said, all right, well, these are going to be resistant and they let you fly. I think I figured out another place that will disperse some of this frost. That they have been hunting down sunshrines, these places where if they activated the shrine, it would disperse the frost in a local area and help protect the valley. If you chain them together, you could actually protect like a range of hexes and force the frost to go around. So that's what they thought they were getting into. Session 1 is finding, but they know for a fact it's unreliable. It doesn't always return the sunshine. Sometimes it returns something, the signature that they find on the map. Sometimes returns something that can stop the frost, but isn't the sunshine. So they're interacting with something else. First session, they see a hole to the Underdark about a day's travel across 24 miles that has been sunk into the Underdark. And this is not the first time they've seen something like this. But in the center of it, these underworld spires, because not everything, it's just little pockets of ground level have been left in place. And so you just have spires like that.
Like an arroyo or something.
Exactly. And one of them in the very center is made out of dead coral. It has these 4 beams of green necrotic light coming from 4 different directions that are shining through the darkness. So the first session is they get some information from a drow house that they're allied with that they contact. No, that was the second session. First session, they go in, they follow one of these beams. There's a little drow outpost embedded into the side of this, again, day's journey across hole in the ground. And they beat the shit out of them. And they shut down they shut down the first beam of light. And when they make it back to the coral, they notice a little bit more of it is alive.
Oh, okay.
Session 2, they shut down 2 more because this time they contact some of their other drow buddies that are from a house way down south. They create a teleportation circle. They teleport a small unit of wyvern riders in, and while the wyvern riders go destroy one outpost, they destroy another. They reconvene and they find themselves, there's a few more animals returning to this place. The coral is more alive. There are creatures made of coral that resemble flamingos and
wow,
little roly-polies made of
armadillos,
but larger. Yeah, some kind of shell creature. Fantastic. That was session 2. A little bit, yeah. These first 2 sessions, not a lot done in each of them. Not a lot happening. Just, but relatively satisfying on the part of the players. But I was wishing that I was, 1, more prepared, and 2, that the players had done more in the context of that session. Next session starts. Immediately, what we begin with is they're riding along. They find I have them roll saving throws for their characters because they're going to be they're about to be under the effects of a spell. They fail, and the people who are dominated or charmed begin moving in a different direction from the rest of the party. And then a dogfight begins in between these spires as the party's riding these young white dragons with a drow consort, right? So the highest ranking male in drow societies, whoever the matron is fucking at that moment, usually a spellcaster, riding an adult amethyst dragon. That's the very first fight of the night. He's coming to kill them.
Aerial combat rules.
Oh yeah, it was fun. One thing the players eventually started doing was, because the young white dragons were getting dominated so often, is one of the players actually hopped off onto one of the spires and just started casting spells from there, so we wouldn't have to deal with it, and so the party could spread out further. Because it doesn't matter, as what was it, Chaz the elf, or who figured this out on Brovenloft? Yeah, the elves might be immune to sleep, or the player characters might be more resistant to charm, but that doesn't necessarily
the mounts
count for their mounts.
Put all the mounts to sleep; they'll just drop out of the sky anyway, right?
Exactly. I don't need to put the elves to sleep. That thing's not immune that you're riding.
Can you fly, Bobby?
But then a plague of baby dragons. That's perfect, Brian. That's exactly how I treat it. That's how I handle the ecology. It's like, yes, you're likely to encounter dragons, but the chance of encountering the same dragon is very slim, because it's probably going to die at some point very soon in the future, and a few make it through. And some of them are well cared for, and that's the only reason they make it out alive. So that's fight number 1. Fight number 2 is they make it to the drow outpost. There's a hag in this one running an alchemy shop. There's a bunch of dryads
the final
around.
beam?
This is the final beam.
Okay.
There's a hag in there. There's an alchemy shop that she's running. There's a bunch of alchemical supplies. She has a gelatinous cube with her, which is wearing a cowboy hat for obvious reasons.
Hey, my character got that hat in Dornell's campaign.
Yes,
I found a gelatinous cube that had.
He posted it in my. He posted it in my Discord.
It's a magical item. I need to practice my my accent so that when I activate it, I can I'll have to get some deep voice going.
It's amazing. It's amazing. And then there's a bunch of other drow critters there, so the players fight those guys. One of the players was running 2 separate characters, and so she wanted to send, or Jack wanted to send. What was it? Jack was playing Maya and Sierra, 2 high-level 5th edition monks. Wanted to send one of them up the elevator, because I love putting elevators in dungeons, straight to the top floor, because each of these had a relatively similar layout. So they were familiar with the layout for each one, and they said, okay, this is consistent. So I know that there's a top room here, like a command center. I'm going to send one of my characters up to the top room, and then this character is going to go over this way, and we're going to investigate this room. Fantastic. The players realize that they have not heard from this character for a little while after they finish investigating the other rooms, and after they finish another combat with another hag, another gelatinous cube.
Oh man.
And they say, oh shoot, let's just go straight to the top of the elevator. They find the missing monk tied up in dimensional shackles specifically. So, if you win the encounter, you get another magic item. Congratulations.
Nice.
One of the enemies is dead. Another one is at like half hit points. The other ones are a little bit damaged because they did some damage. There's the drow consort from earlier because they killed the dragon. They recovered an egg from it by cutting into it, and they found a fully formed egg.
Oh, wow.
But the drow consort used Dimension Door to get away.
Okay.
I was the same drow consort, and this time the matron is with them.
Oh, okay.
Instead of fighting with the matron, because this one character had basically a reaction roll turned out, this one character had already messed with a bunch of her party, and she wasn't terribly inclined to fight the party this time, decided to come up with a little agreement or a little proposal for the party. It's like, hey, we will shut this last beam down on our own. But we want you to do something for you. The party had in a heist recovered a stash of unicorn horns some months earlier, about a month or two prior. I decided the effect of the unicorn horn was like it's a component that you can use to bypass certain restrictions on spells because it's so magically potent.
Okay.
And in this case, if you look on the 5th edition Drow Matron stat block, one of the spells they have is Gate. Gate requires the creature to be on a different plane of existence for you to capture it. Unfortunately, or fortunately rather, the players had some unicorn horns with them. Or no, not with them. They actually had to teleport in the character that was holding them from home base. But
Okay.
they did that. And so they were able to bypass the restriction of summoning this critter from a different plane of existence. And the critter that they summoned from the same plane of existence was another house's matron.
Oh.
This was not House Cain. I believe this was House Mar. No, this was House Cain. And they said that the matron they were trying to fight was from House Marta. And they messaged back and forth with their allies in House Kralis. Like, hey, do you care about these ones? Like, well, we don't really like the Drow houses of the North. So if they want to keep fighting, then fuck them. Go right ahead. Right?
Yeah.
But that's not the person that this Drow matron summoned. She summoned the matron, the Drow matron that they were initially here to fight and made this agreement with, summoned the matron of House Kralis, the party's allies.
Oh.
But they'd never met before. And I gave them the opportunity. I gave them like some history checks and stuff like that to see if they recognized the livery, but they didn't. And so they killed the matron of House Kralis, their ally. This is not the end of the story, by the way.
Oh, man.
In the one round it took the matron of House Kralis to die, she was able to cast a Gate spell of her own to bring a pit fiend in.
Oh. So
they kill the matron of House Kralis. All the other Drow house, all of them bounce. They teleport out. With one exception. Nope. One of them tries to fight the pit fiend and gets clapped. Just gets absolutely annihilated. The party is at the end of a 6 encounter day with virtually no resources left. About to fight an air war. Yeah, after an air war and a raid on basically an airfield, right? All engages with this. The Drow matron and the Drow consort, they just bounced. They just dimension door away. They say, thanks for the help. Goodbye.
Yeah.
Ensues a 10-round fight. This never happens in 5th edition. A 10-round fight versus this pit fiend. At least one character is going down per round. They're desperately trying to keep their party alive. They're casting their few remaining spells to put like Guardian of Faith down to try to keep the pit fiend cornered in one part of the room, and in response, because it's getting surrounded by martial characters now, it casts a wall of fire in front of it, and it's immune to the fire, so it's knocking critters down. The one cleric in the party is using like the very last healing spells that she has access to. The druid barbarian multiclass that has like 200 hit points worth of HP at any given one moment because he's raging in bear form is for the first time in the campaign knocked out.
Oh man.
Oh man.
So he gets rezzed and he starts using his healing spells because he never has the opportunity to use spells. So he's the only one that has some of his resources back, but he's not able to tank for the frontliners. And 10 rounds later, the pit fiend is dead. Wow. And in that one round, I think because in 5th edition, the pit fiend poisons you, and it does repeat damage. And while you are poisoned in this way, you cannot recover hit points.
Oh, no.
And the cleric had to make a choice between using Revivify on the Drow matron that they killed because they figured something was up. They correctly intuited it. Yeah. And saving one of the party members. And so she decided to save the Drow matron first and save the party member later. And I think that what happened with the party member was they actually made their save that round. So it was okay. But they were telling, like, Para, go ahead, do the resurrection thing on them, okay? I have other characters. We could come back to this. But if we lose this person, we're not going to know what happened. Yeah. And that's how the party saved the faction head.
Oh, my gosh. But it's like
one of their only allies on the entire map. After killing
their own screw up. They almost all died trying to undo the damage that they did.
And then they went back to the Spire. And they found they had a new patron, which is a Fey Lord who got birthed out of this newly awakened Coral Spire. So, like, it was this major change to the campaign map because it was inspired by faction play and using everything that the game had to offer. It remains my favorite session. Everybody loved it.
Yeah,
it was 6.5 hours.
The kind of stuff that people talk about for years later, right?
Yeah.
That's why we play the game.
Awesome.
All right, guys. Well, that's all the questions I had. I do want to give you guys a chance. Brown Wizard Winston, your stuff is on Big Geek Emporium. You're on Giant Slayer Games. Those are all down in the show notes. Any other way people can support you?
You can check me out on Twitter /X, but I also have a blog going.
Okay. You want to drop those in the chat?
Yeah.
And Rube, same question. If people want to get more of that sweet gelatinous goodness, how can they support you?
Ooh, the best way is on, let's see here, Drive-Thru RPG. Honestly, the best way right now is to sub to me on YouTube at Gelatinous Rube. And to join my Discord, which is in the link to all of my videos. All my videos have a link, an active link that goes to my Discord. Join in, play some games with me, talk some design shop.
Crafty, how did you just get here and you've already got the whole vibe of the chat?
This just Henry.
It's more viral than my microphone right now.
I don't think it'll let me post links in your chat.
Oh, okay.
And besides that,
put them in the private chat and I'll pop it out there.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's a perfect response, or the perfect method of getting around it. Besides that, I do have some stuff open on Drive-Thru RPG. Take a look. If any of it's to your taste, go right ahead. If not, I do have some stuff that's going to be more in the line of AD&D coming up quite soon.
Cool.
Same.
Alrighty, and if you guys want to encourage us and support us, go ahead and feel free to click that thumbs up button on the video. And if you want more of these shenanigans, I don't know if it's ever going to be like this again, but go ahead and subscribe. And whatever happens next is on you. If you want to sign up for more of this. But guys, I've really had a fun time hanging out with you tonight. Just bros.
It's been a blast.
What's your take on it? I don't know how you felt coming in. I don't know if any of us knew what was going to happen, especially with this chat. But
this was great. This was a lot of fun. I would not mind doing this again for, really whatever else. It's been fun hanging out and stuff. If you guys want to do like a follow up after if you play it, we could talk about that too. But I'm always down to come talk about games, game mechanics, making games, stuff like that.
Henry, give us 4 breadsticks. 4 breadsticks floppability on the Henry Mayer scale.
Oh yeah. No, listen. It's going to be one of the next. Probably, it's going to be the next game the next session that I run is going to be this specific module. One of my players is actually running. Who's run I think 2 sessions so far. She's got a zombie island session planned for just like smack in the middle of the map. There's a big lake in the middle of the map, so she's going to spread around a zombie island there. But the next session I run is going to be that. Yeah,
you'll have to let me know what you think, because I love making this stuff, and like, the money's nice, but it's like cool to make something, put it out there, and then talk to people about it. Like, other people have played it, and I do not know them personally. Yeah. That's pretty cool. That's fun. And that's what I love to talk about.
And there's no spaces to talk shop like this. Like, Dunder, you've done something amazing in preserving for me, and for Brown, like an opportunity to just talk about this in a way where we're not immediately, the conversation isn't immediately getting interrupted with whether prepping the layout of a dungeon or prepping the dungeon that the players said they were going to is somehow railroading.
Yeah.
Or whether or not a reference to strict timekeeping is actually a rule or a specific thing, or maybe it's description, or maybe it's a reference, and the person I'm asking doesn't really have a straight answer for me. I don't have to worry about any of that stuff. It's so much easier to talk shop like this in a voice and video format in a way that's still for public consumption.
Yeah.
All right. That's fantastic.
Well, I feel like that's what I can bring to this. I don't know as much about this stuff as y'all do, but for whatever reason, I've been given access to some really amazing people. And so
notice that. Very cool.
I bring them on here. I let the smart people do their thing. I'm taking notes. I'm learning a lot, and I have a great time with all of you. So I appreciate you coming on here and just being willing to open up and share. We'll probably all get just destroyed on Twitter after that. But for now, we had this kind of moment together where we could just say what we were feeling, even if it wasn't appropriate. And,
I know what you're talking about.
I'm glad I could cough my head off, and that was all right too.
I appreciate you guys inviting me to taking the time to reach out and do this. I was just looking for anyone who was doing any sort of reviews, which it turns out there's almost no one doing it. I think you just have to find people who are like that's what their jam is or something. But I really appreciate you guys just willing to take a chance and
right on, man.
Even checking it out, like looking at it and at least giving me like feedback, and then just telling me your thoughts, and it's fun to talk about too. So,
well, thank you for being willing to subject yourself to this in the first place. That's among other things, brave.
Mm-hmm. So Gene Wolfe is my favorite writer, and once somebody asked him about the difference between writing a novel and writing short stories, and he said writing short stories is like casting rose petals into the Grand Canyon, because he just never got any feedback on them. He never heard back, and so it is cool to be able to, when you put a module out there, find out, hey, people are playing this. Here's what they're having fun with. Here's what they enjoy about it, and that kind of stuff. So yeah, rock on, man. And maybe that'll be the thought we ended on before I have another coughing fit. I don't know what Captain Pringle means. I missed that one. Thanks, Henry. I appreciate your support. And, you guys have a great night. I'm going to go lay down on my bed and stare at the ceiling because the Sudafed has me in its grip.
Hopefully we have a new conflict to talk about next time.
I'm sure we will.
Ricky, when I catch you, Ricky.
Anything.
Ricky, when I catch you, Ricky.
Rick's a good guy, man.
He's no bro of mine. My first interaction with Jeffro Johnson was shitting on him and saying, "You dumb fuck! What do you think the word plot means that you can't have it in a tabletop RPG?" I don't think that we ever threatened pistols at dawn. I don't think we ever threatened erections at dawn. All right.
Do Broasar guys ever like just make friends, or does it always start with like some Steven Seagal fight? So both guys see eye to eye at the end.
That's how we make friends, basically. It's like this entire group, this entire space is predicated on the idea that nobody could figure out what the fuck they were even trying to say to begin with, because everything was caveated with "your mileage may vary." Do what's best for your campaign. I can't give real advice.
Don't let the DMs know they don't need the rules.
carved out a space of blood and bruises and sweat and other ejaculates that like would not be penetrated by retards who couldn't just use objective or just clear language. Jay Jonah, yeah, Crafty we used to go back and forth. We had each other blocked for like 4 fucking years on the air on the Pedantic Server. Every time we talked, he would just give me the J. Jonah Jameson gif of him laughing every single time.
Oh my god!
And then we like came to the point. I think it was over the Casimir Bransky stuff. You know, so long as everybody has fun, and we're just trying to figure out. It's like, no, what can we just make something even worth talking about for once?
Yeah.
Right? Can we not be the one industry that started from okay and is backsliding into terrible for the rest of its undeath, if you will? Perfect.
You just gotta end it. I'm just gonna pull the plug, guys. I hate that to be the thing we go out on, but see you next time.